So apparently you can get your freak on with every and anybody in the upcoming game, Dragon Age the Veilguard, because all of your companions are pansexual. And some people have a problem with that. For those of you that don't know, Bioware has a series of video games called Dragon Age, and I absolutely love the world, the series, the lore. Dragon Age Inquisition, which is the game preceding the Veilguard, is one of my favorite games ever. And as a matter of fact, Netflix has an animated original series based in the Dragon Age world called Dragon Age Absolution. I definitely recommend you check it out. There's also queer representation of the main characters throughout the story. And so because of that, the Dragon Age world and mythos and video games have been very queer friendly, but there was always limits. You were only allowed to like maybe romance one character here or there. But in this latest game that's coming out in fall of this year, 2024, they're allowing you to take it a step further by romancing any character that you want without limits. And there are people that are upset. They don't like this news. And I'm not even talking about the stereotypical homophobic people that don't like any queer representation in their media, but there are people that are queer or allies that think that this news is lazy because it takes away certain agencies for certain characters. Like, for example, there was a character named Solus in Dragon Age Inquisition. He would only romance you if you were a female elf. Or there was another character, Dorian. He would only romance you because Dorian is gay, so he would only romance you if your character was a man. And then there was also a storyline where he came out to his father didn't accept him, yada, yada, yada. And so people think that by making everybody pansexual, that removes certain agencies and certain storylines and certain personalities with certain characters. And I could understand that argument, but I also kind of disagree with that sentiment of it being lazy writing, only because A, it's a world that's completely different from our own. It's a fantasy world. It's a world with dragons. If the writer chooses to make everybody pansexual, you can't judge the real world, especially considering how stigmatized queer representation is. You can't take that and say, oh, it doesn't make sense for everybody to be pansexual. I think about something that was written for Loki in Marvel Comics and Young Avengers, where he's like, sex and sexuality is viewed very differently on Asgard than it is on Earth. Like, yeah, there are sexual acts, even in real life. Like, yeah, I am a homosexual man, I'm gay, but if I had sex with a woman, I could still gain some level of pleasure. I don't want to have or have any desire to have sex with a woman, but a whole is a whole. Part of the reason more men don't experiment isn't necessarily because they don't want to or they're not curious. It's because it's stigmatized in this reality. And also from a gaming perspective, if I'm the one that's creating and crafting and controlling and making choices for my character, yeah, there are certain characters that I want to romance. And if it's my game and my narrative and my choices, I should be able to romance whoever I want. Because also when you think about it, 95%, 99% of video games are heterosexual. You have no options for queer romance. And then in the rare instances that you do have queer romance or queer options in these types of stories, a lot of times the queer romance and queer storyline is not that good. Even when I think about the original Dragon Age games, Dragon Age Origins, where you had the option to romance another character named Zevran if you were a gay male, but like that storyline sucks. So even me, despite wanting to see queer representation, I chose to romance Morgan as a man, like the heterosexual romance, because the storyline was way more interesting. Mass Effect, it was more interesting for me as a male shepherd to romance Jack, who was a woman, because the storyline was more interesting than the queer romance in Mass Effect 3. In Dragon Age Origins, I wanted my male Grey Warden to romance the character of Alistar, or in Dragon Age 2, I wanted to romance Cullen, but I wasn't allowed to. And I get in real life, that's a thing. You can't romance whoever you want. But again, it's not real life. It's a video game. It's a fantasy. I should be able to craft and do and romance whomever I want. Think about Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3, everybody will try to get in your pants. And I love that you had the option to be able to romance whomever you wanted. There were some playthroughs that I romanced Shadowheart. There were some playthroughs that I had a one-night stand with Lae'zel. I had a fivesome with Halsin, Astarion, and 2 Drow elves. Like, everybody was getting it on in Baldur's Gate 3, and I love that. Then also from a gamer perspective, it just opens up the door for many different sides and facets and playthroughs with so many different characters, and increases the replayability, because maybe one moment you romance this character, but then in the next playthrough you romance this character. You get to see certain scenes, like with how integral the character of Solus is in Dragon Age the Veilguard, I wish I could have had the romance option with him with my male Inquisitor. I know people that haven't played Dragon Age, they're probably like, I don't know what you're talking about, but you could kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. Ultimately, I just think it makes the playing experience that much more enjoyable. Obviously, if you're strictly heterosexual, you don't have to romance another character of the same sex, but at least opens up the door for people that want to. Because more times than not, as a gamer, I am locked out of queer romances, period. Because like I said, 99% of all video games are straight. So we get a video game where all the characters are pansexual. I'm here for it. I'm excited about Dragon Age the Veilguard, and it can't get here soon enough. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comment section below. Do the things over here to boost this video on the algorithm.